The alien princess crossed worlds to claim honor through blood, until the human she challenged dropped his sword and opened his arms. In that moment, she didn't lose the duel. She lost her certainty of who the enemy was. The dueling circle was a ring of pale glass set into a wind-carved plateau. The frontier town of Halcyon's edge spread below like a scatter of lanterns. Night pressed close, clear and cold, starlight gathering in the hollow of the world. Evelyn Thorne stood at the edge of the circle with her two dragons, Ashwing, Bronze and Firebright, and Lumen. Pale as morning, watching the crowd arrange itself into the neat geometry of spectacle. Witnesses on the outer rim, lawkeepers along the meridian lines, and in the heart, two figures measuring the distance between violence and choice. She had come as a neutral observer, hired to read the old treaties aloud and ensure no one called murder by a prettier name. The parchment she carried was thin as memory. The law it held was older than most of the onlookers' grandmothers. Across from her, the challenger lifted her chin. The alien princess wore armor that drank starlight and returned it as a soft, ominous gleam. Silver tattoos spiraled from temple to jaw, each line a vow. Her name moved through the crowd like an unlit fuse. Princess Keith of the Spiral Houses, exile, heir, blade bearer. Her people made a map of honor first, and only afterward asked where they were standing. Her opponent, if he would be called, that was a human named Cole Reed. He had arrived 2 months earlier in a patched shuttle. A man who seemed intent on becoming furniture, fixed in a corner, useful if leaned upon, otherwise unremarked. The night he landed, he carried his only bag to the ridge above town and sat until dawn, watching the line where dark becomes day like a student of inevitability. He took work that fit in his hands, repairing wind turbines, hauling water, mending roofs. People learned to like him without noticing when they'd started. Now he stood barefoot in the glass circle, a practice sword at his feet, his palms open in a peacekeeper's posture. He wore no armor. The wind touched his shirt and found no metal beneath. "State the cause," Evelyn said, voice clear enough to carry. Kef's eyes never left the human. "He offered comfort to an enemy of my house. He will answer for it in the oldest language." Murmurs stirred the ring. Evelyn's dragons shifted, nostrils flaring. Ashwin muttered in her mind, "She smells of winter steel." Lumen's reply was quieter, and of loneliness she can't admit. Evelyn lifted the parchment. By the pact of open skies, combatants enter freely and may withdraw freely before first blood. On first blood, the bond is sealed and the duel must finish. No projectile weapons. No outside interference. Do you both understand? "I do," Keith said. Cole nodded once, the smallest possible yes. "Then begin," Evelyn said, and let the parchment fall to her side. The princess drew her blade with a sound like a breath caught in the throat. She stepped smoothly to the left, looking for the angle that would make him less human and more problem. He did not move. She feinted. He didn't flinch. She lunged fast, an arc of silver, and he stepped aside, just enough that the blade found only the idea of him. A second pass, sharper. He slid back, graceful as wind choosing a new wall. She smiled then, quick and fierce, relief. It would be a dance, then a lesson, then a finish. Order restored. "Pick up your sword," she said. He looked at it, as if he'd forgotten it existed. "No, you insult me," she said. "No," he answered. "I'm trying not to." Her eyes narrowed. "You think I cannot kill a man who refuses to fight?" "I think you shouldn't have to," he said softly. For a heartbeat, the crowd stopped breathing. Evelyn felt the line inside the prince's shift. A thread pulled a fraction too tight. Keith moved again, slower, blade tracing a question mark in the air. Cole drifted with it, never quite where the danger expected him to be. "You offered comfort to my enemy," Keith said. "He was choking on his own blood," Cole replied. "I gave him air." "He would have killed my sister," Keith said. "I didn't know that," he said. I knew he was dying. You claim ignorance as defense? I claim mercy, he said. If you want to duel the man who taught him to become a knife, I'll sharpen your blade. But I won't fight you for choosing to be alive. The princess's breath left her in a sound that wasn't quite a laugh. You think honor is a coat a person can take off when it starts to rain. I think honor that can't shelter anyone isn't worth keeping dry, he said. Ashwing's frill lifted, pleased. Lumen's tail drew a thin, bright line on the glass, a signature of approval. Evelyn didn't smile, but she felt the old ache under her sternum shift, something like hope, or memory. To change tactics. She cut low, then high, then pivoted, blade whistling for the soft muscle over his ribs. He stepped in, not away, catching her wrist as gently as a promise, and before any of them understood what he meant to do, he pulled her into his arms. It wasn't a trap. It wasn't a trick disguised as kindness. It was a human hug given in a place that spoke every language but that one. The princess went very still. Her blade hovered behind his back, the point of breath from deciding what sort of story this would become. His chin rested near her shoulder. She could hear his heart. It was steady. Not brave steady. Ordinary steady. The kind of beat people build houses around. Around the circle, lawkeepers shifted, uncertain which rule applied to this. People's faces changed, one by one, like windows being opened. Keith could have pushed him away and killed him for the insult. She could have cut his throat and called it mercy on a man who didn't understand the world. She could have stepped back into the safety of sharp things. She didn't move. Why do you do this? She asked, not loudly. Because you look like someone who has only ever been held by expectation, he said. I thought you might like to know what the other thing feels like. Silence. Even the wind paused to listen. Evelyn felt the moment bend history, considering a different verb. The princess lowered her blade. It touched the glass with a tiny, startled ring. From the outer rim, a figure in a charcoal cloak pivoted away from the crowd and spoke into a wrist device, voice low and eager. Evelyn's attention snagged there. The packs were full of ways to win without fighting. She knew the smell of sabotage. Ashwin's head snapped in the same direction. Lumen's light sharpened around his eyes. Keith stepped back from Cole, breath unsteady. She turned and faced the circle, armor reflecting a softer sky than the one above them. By rights of my house and the laws of witness, I declare this duel concluded without blood, she said. A tremor of disbelief moved through the onlookers. She raised one hand steady now. By the older law still, the law beneath the laws, I name the human Cole Reed my chosen. A shockwave cut the night in half. The ring of glass fractured, spider webbing out from beneath Evelyn's feet. The plateau bucked. People screamed. The charcoal-cloaked figure was already running toward the service lift, cloak snapping like a signal. Bomb! Ashwing roared into Evelyn's mind. Shield! She commanded, and Lumen's radiance leaped. A dome of pearl over the circle as shards scythed upward. Evelyn lunged toward Keith and Cole, parchment falling, blade out. Down! She shouted, catching the princess's arm with one hand and pushing the human with the other as a second blast hammered. The far side of the ring, below the plateau. Engines howled alive multiple signatures, hard and hot. This was no angry local. This was an extraction. Or a strike. Keth's eyes blazed as the ground trembled again. They would deny me the right to choose, she said, voice shaking with fury. Cole grabbed her hand and squeezed, the human answer to 1,000 years of rules. Then hold on, he said, as the dueling circle cracked open like an eye and something vast and engineered woke beneath Halcyon's edge. Dust rained from the shattered edge of the dueling ring as the ground moaned, beneath Halcyon's edge like a wounded leviathan turning in its sleep. Evelyn Thorne braced herself against the buckling glass, one hand on Keth's shoulder, the other on Cole's arm. Beneath her boots, The plateau flexed stone, remembering it was once molten and angry. Lumen's shield still glowed overhead, catching falling debris like an invisible net. Ashwing prowled the perimeter of the fractured circle, tail lashing, nostrils smoking. Who planted that charge? Cole yelled over the shriek of twisting metal. Not someone who wanted a duel to finish. Evelyn answered grimly. Keith lifted her head, eyes burning not with fear, but insult sharpened into clarity. They bombed her right. They spilled witness blood. This is sacrilege. Then whoever hired them does not care about law, Cole said. Keth's jaw tightened. No one tries to stop a duel unless they fear the outcome. Evelyn nodded once. They feared your choice. Beneath their feet, a new vibration thrummed, deep enough to rattle bone. The plateau wasn't just cracking, it was opening. Move. Evelyn snapped. She pulled Keith and Cole toward the high ground just as a massive seam split across the dueling ring. Glass teeth sheared upward, and beneath them a chamber yawned open, too geometric, too deliberate to be nature. The blast hadn't destabilized the ground accidentally. It had unsealed something. Keith looked down into that widening fissure, and sudden dread hollowed her expression. They weren't trying to kill me, she breathed. They were trying to expose the vault. Evelyn frowned. What vault? The first throne, Keith whispered. Buried before my grandmother was born. A weapon of legitimacy. If an unchosen claimant controls it, then your right to succession dies publicly. Evelyn concluded the choice Keith had just made in front of witnesses would be erased by force of history before it could take root. Unless they reached the vault first. The roar of engines below grew louder. Flyers or grav sleds deploying inside the newly cracked fissure. Whoever the saboteur spoke with had sent reinforcements beneath them. Not above. Cole looked from the trembling floor to Keith. If they reach that throne, they can claim your crown in your name. Without you. Keith nodded once, slow, furious. A stolen ascension. They want the symbol, Evelyn said. Not the sovereign. They want a puppet, Keith corrected. Cole exhaled. Then we go before they seal it. He stepped toward the fracture before anyone told him to. Evelyn almost smiled, grim, but approving. The desert had not been wrong about him after all. They descended along a sloped fracture of stone that had become a walkway by necessity. The air below was cooler, metallic. Ancient circuitry pulsed faintly along the exposed walls, veins waking after centuries of sleep. The dragons moved like twin sentinels, Ashwing forward, Lumen guarding the rear. Has anyone else in your house ever found this? Cole asked. No one living, Keith replied. The throne was sealed by oath. No heir could touch it until the choosing was complete. It was meant to ensure our line chose worth, not lineage alone. Now someone else means to rewrite that worth, Evelyn said. Keth's voice dropped, low and dangerous. They will not. The fracture opened into a vast corridor shaped from impossible stone, its ceiling arched like the rib cage of some sleeping sky creature. Light traveled the walls in silver currents, pooling into symbols that reacted to Keth's presence. But when Cole stepped forward, beside her the symbols brightened. Keith noticed. So did Evelyn. You shouldn't be able to interact with First Tech, Keith whispered. Only bloodholders can. Cole touched one glowing line. It pulsed beneath his palm like a pulse returning pressure. Evelyn tilted her head. He was recognized in the duel circle. A public claim of bond. Keith inhaled softly, realizing it in full. The right accepted him. Not only as witness, she looked at Cole, but as mate. Cole blinked once. That wasn't a marriage. For my people, Keith said. Voice steady but not neutral. It was enough to begin one. His mouth parted, but no answer came before he could find one. A voice echoed ahead, hard, artificial, command-driven. Seal the corridor. If the princess enters, take her alive. The human dies first. Mercenaries. Already too close. Evelyn turned sharp. Ashwing front. The bronze dragon lowered his body. Ready to strike. Lumen shield Keith. A halo of pale light formed instantly around the princess, like a vow. Cole stood very still for a heartbeat. Then he stepped forward, not behind them, but ahead. Keith reached for his sleeve. You do not owe my life. He looked back at her with a calmness she didn't understand yet. I don't owe it. He placed himself in front of her anyway. I'm choosing it. Something in her expression cracked, not weakness, not fear, recognition, like a sword suddenly remembering it was once metal drawn from earth. Not destiny forged from doctrine, from deeper in the vault tunnel. The saboteur's silhouette appeared, cloak now thrown back, revealing house armor with the crest deliberately scratched out. A traitor to one bloodline in service of another. He raised a shocklance. Cole didn't flinch. Evelyn braced. Keith inhaled. Sharply, Lumen's glow tightened, but before the blast struck, the throne beneath the world woke. A tremor ran the length of the corridor, and the light on the walls shifted shape. All first tech symbols brightened at once, turning from silver to deep forged gold. The floor beneath their feet resonated low, sovereign, ancient, not triggered by Keith, triggered by him. The saboteur lowered his weapon in disbelief. It acknowledged the human? Keith stared, eyes wide, not horrified, not angry. Claimed, because the first throne did not respond to inheritance. It responded to worthiness. And in the oldest law of her house, one truth superseded all others. If the throne chooses your mate, your choice is already sealed. Kef's voice was almost a whisper. It chose you. For a long heartbeat, no one moved. The vault's golden light throbbed through the stone like a second pulse, older than nations and older than grief. The mercenaries who had expected a clean capture now stood frozen on the threshold of something sacred enough to rewrite bloodlines. The first throne had recognized him. Not Keth's rank, not her heritage, not her blade. Him. Cole Reed, a human with no heraldry, no crest, no claim, except the one he had made by standing in front of her instead of behind. Kef's breath trembled, not from fear, but from revelation she was taught never to expect. A bond chosen by destiny, not decree. Evelyn Thorne felt it too. Old magic waking, old history unrolling like memory. Lumen pressed against Kef's hip like a living oath. Ashwing prowled closer to Cole, with the wary reverence of a creature who has just scented a king the world hasn't met yet. The saboteur found his voice first, sharp with disbelief. This is impossible. The throne cannot choose foreign blood. Cole didn't lift his head from the glow beneath his hand. Maybe it doesn't care where blood comes from. Maybe it cares where it goes. The saboteur snapped. Kill him before the resonance completes. Evelyn stepped forward, blade drawn. Try, and you'll never reach daylight again. Ashwin snarled, smoke curling from his jaws. Lumen's halo sharpened to a luminous wall. The traitor hesitated, one man against an elf. Dragons and a throne waking under its own laws. But desperation makes fools brave. He lunged. Evelyn met him in half a breath, steel clashing, sparks blooming like furious stars. She forced him back, but more mercenaries spilled into the corridor behind him, weapons crackling, formation tightening like a vice. Forward. The saboteur barked. Take the human, sever the bond before the throne seals. Keith stepped in front of Cole. Not a warrior now, a princess reclaiming ownership of her own fate. You will not touch him, she said, voice low and lethal. You cannot defend both him and the right. The traitor snarled. She tilted her head slightly. I do not need to defend him. The floor answered her, not in fealty to Keith, but to Cole. Light veins along the stone brightened again, and the whole vault shifted, as though turning its face toward him more fully. The mercenary stumbled. The saboteur froze. It wasn't metaphor. The throne had pivoted its allegiance. Evelyn understood first. It isn't choosing the sovereign, she whispered. It's choosing a foundation. A partner to anchor the house before it crowns one. Kef's throat tightened. The throne is saying what no council would ever dare, that your people were never meant to rule alone. Evelyn finished. Keith turned toward Cole. For the first time since her exile, she looked not like a challenger stripped of homeland, but a future beginning to take shape. Behind them, the saboteur cursed under his breath and switched his lance to overload mode. A detonation charge, not a weapon. Move! Evelyn shouted, but Cole stepped forward instead of back. The throne reacted. A current of energy leapt from the wall to Cole's arm, then from Cole to the ground between him and the enemy. The vault floor reshaped in a blink, a wall of goldstone lifting like rising earth to block the blast. The shockwave hit and shattered harmlessly. Silence fell again, but different now. Not stillness, certainty. The saboteur stared at Cole with something uglier than hatred. Fear. You don't even know what power you're holding, he rasped. Cole looked at him, not with triumph, not with arrogance, just calm truth. I'm not holding it, he said. I'm being trusted with it. Something changed in Keth's expression, a softening at the edge of command. A woman seeing in real time the moment her people's oldest weapon chose mercy over lineage, and was right to do so. She stepped beside Cole, not ahead of him, a gesture that in her culture meant equality before all oaths. You stand with me? She asked quietly. No, he said. She blinked. Then he finished. I stand for you. The mercenaries faltered. Two retreated a step. The saboteur's certainty cracked. The household crest oath was clear. He who stands for the heir becomes her keep, her chosen shield. He had given the ancient vow without knowing the language. The throne sealed it. The light rose again behind them, forming a slow crown shape over the platform, unfinished. Waiting, a promise, not a coronation. Keith drew one long, steady breath. Then this duel was never about defeating me, she murmured. It was about finding me. Evelyn turned toward the mercenaries, blade lowered but not relaxed. You have one chance to walk away, she warned. The throne has already written its verdict. The saboteur spat in fury. No throne will ever crown a human mate. Cole didn't look away. Then maybe, he said softly, your world needed a new kind of crown. The corridor dimmed, and the throne began to open, not physically, spiritually, revealing something older, deeper, and more binding than rule or blood. Keith felt it like a call in her bones. He is not my weakness, she whispered. He is my witness. The new war would not be fought for her life, but for her right to choose the world she would build, and the hand she would build it with. The vault doors sealed behind them with a slow, aching finality, like an ancient beast closing its ribs around a heartbeat it meant to protect. Above ground, Halcyon's edge was still shaking from the blast, but down here, the world had narrowed to revelation, allegiance, and the threat that refused to die with shame. The saboteur didn't flee. He composed himself, because men who deal in stolen crowns do not run from thrones, they try to rewrite them. You think this is recognition? He said, drawing himself upright. It is contamination. A foreign blood bond cannot legitimize succession. Keith stepped forward. The throne answered. That is legitimacy. No, he jabbed a finger toward Cole. This is exploitation. The pact states an heir cannot bind until she completes a sovereign trial. A duel without blood does not count as right closing. Evelyn's eyes narrowed. He protected you instead of defeating you. That is the right. It is older than your pacts. Older does not mean lawful, the traitor snapped. Older means original. Keith replied, voice low, steady, dangerous. The pacts were built to cage the right, not extinguish it. The saboteur smiled thinly. Then let the council judge it. Until then, The human comes with me as contested consort candidate. If he is removed from proximity before resonance finalizes, the bond dissolves. Ashwing's talons scraped stone. Lumen's light brightened like a warning sun. Cole stiffened. You're not claiming jurisdiction over me. I already have, the saboteur said. By exile law. A disputed mate bond means the human must be taken into political custody until the challenge is resolved. The heir may reclaim him if she wins the hearing. Evelyn understood the ploy instantly. They don't need to control her, she murmured. They just have to separate you long enough for her to be declared unfit to ascend. Kef's fingers curled slowly into fists. And once I am declared unfit, they'll raise a puppet claimant, Cole finished. Exactly, the saboteur said softly. The throne can wake all it likes. It cannot name a sovereign without court sanction. Evelyn looked to Cole. He is telling the truth about their loophole, and also bragging about the knife hidden inside it. Keith took a step toward the saboteur. You bombed a sacred right. You violated witness law. And you are speaking of legality? Because law is power, he hissed. And power is not earned by sentiment-only survival. That's where you're wrong, Cole said quietly. The saboteur scoffed. Name me one sovereign who ruled by sentiment. I can't, Cole said. That's why yours all died afraid. Then the vault changed. The heartbeat in the walls turned heavier, deeper, listening. Symbols along the floor realigned, no longer marking passage, but judgment. The throne wasn't merely awake now that it was watching the argument. The saboteur didn't notice the shift, but Keith did. She felt the ancient gaze like a wind against the inside of her ribs. If the throne deems him consort, she whispered, then no council may dispute it. Evelyn looked up. But it must do so openly, in full awakening. And awakening requires resonance, Keith said. Resonance requires. She turned to Cole. Proximity, willing proximity, Cole frowned. Meaning what exactly? Keith drew a breath. Not endurance, not submission, not obedience. Then what? He asked. Standing with me, she said softly, through scrutiny with no sword in your hand. Her eyes held his for a long second. You have already done half of the right, Cole Reed. The second half is acceptance. He stared back, not frightened, but humbled in a way warriors rarely are. Before he could answer, footsteps clattered down the corridor, reinforcements arriving in armored ranks. The saboteur's eyes gleamed. Guards, take him. They advanced. Lumen spread his wings, light flaring like dawn. Ashwing roared, flames licking his teeth, but they didn't attack because the throne spoke. Not in voice, in law. Gold lines rose from the floor, forming a circular barrier between Cole and the guards. The same barrier coiled outward around Keith, not separately, but as one enclosure. Keith gasped. Evelyn smiled slowly. The throne has just made its stance. She murmured. The saboteur finally realized what had happened. No. No, this is impossible. The rite can't finalize without coronation. Evelyn turned to him. It isn't coronation, she said. It's recognition. Kef's voice was quiet but absolute. By the will of the first throne, I am no longer permitted to face the council without him. Cole's hand lifted, not forced, not bound, simply drawn to hers. And by the same law, she continued, no force may separate him from me unless the throne itself withdraws the bond. Evelyn's words completed it, and the throne does not withdraw. It only chooses. The traitor stared, throat working. His last card ripped from under him by the oldest judge in his lineage. Then the only way left is to kill him before the rite finalizes, he whispered, retreat turning to murder in his eyes. He drew his blade, and the throne sealed the floor. A golden wall rose, dividing him from his target, unbreakable. The saboteur staggered back, realizing too late that this duel had never been about winning through death. It had been about proving worth through staying. The court would not see a prisoner. The court would see a consort already sanctified, and Keith would not walk into that judgment alone. The traitor stared through the golden barrier, breathing hard, fury curdling into dread. The first throne had judged before the council could even reach the chamber. The old laws had not been overruled. They had been remembered, and across generations of empire, nothing was more dangerous than a law that remembered mercy. The guards who had arrived behind him hesitated. None crossed forward. Even soldiers raised on obedience could feel it, a presence in the stone older than birthright, older than blood, older than crowns. A sovereign might be argued, but a throne's choosing could not. Keith looked at Cole, not as a challenger, not as a witness, but as if finally seeing the thing she had been taught to stop searching for. Not a victor, not a shield, but a partner. You understand what this means? She asked softly. He nodded. I think I do. You're not being given to me. I'm being asked to stand beside you. And forever tied in law, the saboteur hissed from the other side of the barrier. He cannot withdraw without tarnish. He binds himself to your fate and your enemies. Cole looked at him calmly. I already chose that when I stepped in front of her. Keith went still, not stunned, not afraid, moved. It was the first thing this world had ever offered her that did not demand something in exchange. Far above, the tremors reached the surface. The townspeople gathered around the cracked dueling ring, staring down into the fissure as golden light spilled upward like a sunrise climbing out of the earth. Is that the vault, the first throne? Witnesses spread the word faster than rumor could run. No council could bury this. No sabotage could undo it. The rite was not happening in secret, that it was now happening in public. The throne pulsed again, and the inner chamber reconfigured. The golden enclosure around Cole and Keith rose like a dais. A final ring of inscription circled them, glowing brighter and brighter until the markings were fully visible. Not blood, but bond. Not heritage, but choice. Not allegiance, but keeper. Keith read them aloud. Voice quiet, reverent, trembling at the edges. These are the founding lines. Evelyn nodded. Your empire forgot them. The throne did not. The saboteur slammed a fist into the barrier. This is not how succession was meant to be. No, Keith agreed softly. This is how it was meant before fear rewrote it. She turned to Cole. The light framed her in a halo of molten gold. Every part of her training said to stand tall, to speak like steel, to claim as monarch. But what came out was simply human. Do you stand with me? She asked. Not as weapon, he said. She swallowed. Then as what? As the one who stays, he answered. She exhaled, slowly like a held lifetime slipping free. And do you accept my people? My battles? The danger that follows me? He shook his head gently. Not yours, ours. The golden runes flared. The throne. Accepted. The saboteur made one last desperate move, drawing a concealed blade from his gauntlet and lunging toward the inner barrier as if momentum alone might pierce law. But before he reached it, Ashwing slammed into him from the side, pinning him to the stone. Lumen rose behind him, light shifting into a lattice that bound the man's limbs to the floor. You tried to steal a crown, Evelyn said coldly. Instead, you delivered its proof. The guards stepped back, some saluting, others kneeling. The tide had turned not with violence, but with witness. A sovereign people had just seen the law remember itself. The throne lowered the golden barrier, not dissolving it, inviting them forward. Together, Keith reached for Cole's hand, not claiming him, matching him. The vault walls unfurled into full illumination. The ancient coronation seal formed above them in arclight, not a coronation yet, but a promise locked into history. He was now inextricable, not decoration. Foundation. And for the first time in her life, Kef's voice carried certainty instead of duty. You were not meant to defeat me, she told him softly. You were meant to stand beside me, so I never had to stand alone. Cole squeezed her hand. Then let's stand here. And keep standing. Above ground, the crack in the dueling ring glowed gold, every witness seeing it with their own eyes. Reports would spread. Councils would scramble. But it was already too late. The throne had made its choice before they could silence it, and no empire in any galaxy can unmake a choice the foundation itself remembers. If this story moved you, subscribe for more HFY sci-fi tales where humanity wins not with power, but with presence. Follow for the next world where a single human changes destiny just by refusing to walk away.